everybody, welcome back to the Claremont Classic Garage. Now that we've got the transmission, the E4OD for our camper out there, we've taken it apart, kind of had a look inside there and got the case cleaned up. Now we can start having a look at our parts. I'm going to show you some of the stuff that we're going to be doing to it, and we're going to start getting everything ready to put this thing back together. So here's some of the things we've got for it. We've got a couple of different range selector switches. You can see one goes straight up, and the other one is a horizontal one. We have a brand new speed sensor, and this is a dual purpose. Here's a used one here. So you can see it's a dual purpose. It's an electronic speed sensor, but it also has a pass-through for the cable, because these old vans, even though they need the electronic portion of the speed sensor to run the transmission, it still used a cable-driven speedometer. So it's a bit of an oddball part, but lucky we were able to get a new one. Here we've got a seal kit because we're going to be resealing the transmission, and underneath is a genuine Motorcraft pan gasket, even though our seal kit came with one. Here's a new suction filter for the transmission. We've got two output shafts because, okay, originally when I got this transmission, I knew that the output shaft that was in it, this one, was for an F-Series truck, which picks up the vehicle speed from the sensor in the top of the rear axle. E-Series trucks, vans, are different. Don't ask me why they would do it that way, but that's how they did it. Anyway, so originally I did my research and found that I needed an 8-tooth drive gear for my speedometer. But then what happened after was we changed the tire size. We went from the 215 85/16 tires that it would normally have. We went to a 225 75/16 tire, and it's about an inch shorter in diameter. So we then found that we needed a 7-tooth gear. So this is the combination that's going to make our speedometer run: a 7-tooth drive gear and an orange 20-tooth driven gear. So that will keep our speedometer accurate. So we've got everything we need there. So this we don't need at all. That we don't need at all. Next thing I want to talk about, something we're going to change, is the oil pan. Now this is the oil pan off of it. You can see here that it's got these little flanges around the bowl holes, and that is for use with a cork gasket. You see how that fits over that? And these things contact the case and keep you from over tightening the gasket, which makes it swell out and makes it leak. I've decided we're going to go with a 4R100 pan, which does not have these flanges, but it does. It's flat, and it uses a replaceable gasket. We don't need this anymore because we've got two new ones. The 4R100 pan, also you'll see different, has a deeper sump. It holds more fluid. And on top of that, it's got a drain plug. I mean, we could add a drain plug to this one, but heck, this one already has it and holds more oil. That's great. The only other thing I have to figure out is the camper has a transmission temperature gauge on the dash. So I need to decide if I'm going to add a bung in the pan, or for that gauge, or if I'm going to tee it into one of the cooler lines. Now, I would guess that transmission temperature is something that I can display on the little module I bought that runs this transmission. I may be able to display the transmission temperature on that. So I'm going to do a little bit of reading. I've got, well, a lot of reading to do. So what I have to do is, we'll get to that after. I'm also going to put in the Transco shift kit. I love these things. I've put so many of these in so many transmissions, and it comes with all the stuff you need. I also got this. This is, what is this thing here? It's a second kit that I got for this. Oh, yes. New line pressure regulator valves, because the factory ones apparently are less than ideal. They give you a couple of snap rings that you need to replace. And this is what they call a tugger kit. It's not a high performance shift kit. It's for trucks that work, that pull, that haul. So that's exactly what we need for this. And I also have this. This here is the unique shifter shaft and arm assembly that I need for the column shift linkage in the van. Thank goodness I was able to find that. So now what I have to do is a whole bunch of reading. I've got the overhaul manual for the transmission. I've got the instructions for the shift kit, and I gotta find the instructions for, they're in that box over there, the instructions for the electronic controller that I bought. And I have to read all those, familiarize myself with them, because this shift kit, this particular one, is a take the transmission apart shift kit. Some of them are just, pull a valve body down, change a few things, put it back. But this has to be done with the transmission apart. So I have to make sure I don't miss any steps, because with them snap rings and things, there's things that have to be done as the transmission is put together. So I need to make sure I'm aware of all that. Here's the little gizmo that's going to run the transmission for us. And here's the manual for it. So I'm going to add that to my reading pile. And we'll go from there. Here's another thing. This I made because I need a cancel button for the overdrive inside this thing. So this is the from about here over is that part of a shift handle the same year, an 1986 shift handle like our truck, and then from here over is a 2003 one with the overdrive cancel switch, and there's a little LED there that lights up yellow when you've got the overdrive canceled. You can see here how they customized this, especially for me, RV with 460 with a 1995 E4OD. So they give me the wiring harness package for 95 to 97 E4OD, because the earlier ones had square plugs, I believe, and this one has round plugs. So that tells me all that. I spec that I need it for that speedo cable drive / speed sensor unit that I showed you. So it's calibrated to work with that. This should all be great. They were a great company to deal with. This here is the transmission cross member from an E4OD equipped Econoline. We'll have to drill a couple of holes in each side of the frame rails, but I've got a diagram. I know exactly where I have to drill them. That's not a problem. And back here we've got the long dipstick tube for a van transmission. Although this one did come off diesel. So it's really, really hard to find big block cube vans in the junkyard. They don't put them out. They just squish them, right? So the odd time you find like a regular E350, like a church van or something with a 7.3 in it. And you can grab this sort of stuff. So anyway, I've got that. That's fine. We'll make it work. It'll just be a matter of tacking a bracket on it somewhere to attach it to the 460. Another thing we're going to have to deal with is the drive shaft, because this transmission is much longer than the C6 that's in it. But what I did, again, from I guess I managed to find a cube van in the boneyard. And I had one. No, I think I scrapped a cube van. I got the drive shaft from a cube van that I scrapped. And so what I'm hoping, even though they're much different years, the hanger bearing on the Econoline vans is always in the same position back here. So it's the length of the front section of the drive shaft that varies depending on what transmission you have. So I have one. I've got a complete drive shaft from an Econoline van with an E4OD or a 4R100. I'm just hoping that the spline back here, in space here, the slip spline behind the hanger bearing is the same. And that when I put it together, it remains in phase. Otherwise, it'll be a visit to the drive shaft shop. Hopefully, it will not come to that and everything's just going to go together as I suspect it should. I opened up my gasket kit and found some very pleasant surprises. These 3 bolts that it said in the book to throw away. I thought I'd be going up to the Ford dealer to get these. No, comes with them. They gave me all new check balls. They gave me this little filter. They do not all have this. This one does not. They gave me, there was another seal. Oh, yeah, here, the solenoid filter. They gave me a new one. This is great. There's a selector shaft seal. Fantastic. Very nice kit. I also tidied up here, and I'm in the process of putting away the parts I don't need and keeping the parts I do need. Like this is the output shaft we're going to use, so it can go there on the wagon. We'll get the bench cleaned up, and then we can start getting some work done. I went through all our hardware. I cleaned all the bolts, organized everything. So this stuff is all ready to go. Oil pan bolts. These are the tail housing bolts. The oil pump bolts. Extension housing is all cleaned up. It's ready to go. I'm debating whether or not to leave this seal in because this was a recent rebuild. They do give me a seal in the overhaul kit, but it doesn't have this big dust bellows on it. So I'll think about that and decide what I want to do. The main case here, I've gone around and cleaned all my gasket surfaces. I've run a tap down all the holes, just the external holes. So the pan, the extension housing, the pump. The internal stuff, I'm not too worried about. It doesn't get the salt and stuff at it that ruins the threads. Here is a whole bunch of paperwork that came out of the overhaul kit. So I'm going to read that while I'm doing my other research. This is pretty good. I'm pretty impressed with all this. I love reading stuff and learning stuff. So I think we're going to be able to build a really nice transmission out of this. So I'm going to go in now and do some reading. And I guess the last part of this video, I'll be talking about any upgrades or whatnot we have to do before we get started, according to all this reading material. I did all my reading and just kind of jotted down a list of things that I have to pay attention to when I'm going through, because these things all kind of have little things that need to be addressed, aftermarket parts that need to be put in as I go, etc. One thing I did think of, and I'll show you a little bit of now, I needed to make sure I had the right suction filter for the transmission. So earlier I showed you the 2 oil pans. There was the shallow one and the deep one. Well, the deep one is also referred to as 4x4 pan because 4-wheel drive trucks use that deeper pan. There's no reason to not use it on our 2-wheel drive van. There's lots of room for it. But what you do have to understand is that added depth of the sump is useless unless your pickup has an extended tube to reach down there. So on the shallow pan, this little pickup tube only is about that tall. It's 5/8, 3/4 of an inch. Whereas on the deep pan, it is almost 2 inches tall. It will look a little different if you've got one of the all plastic filters, because the the main body of it is a little bit thicker, so the you'll only have about an inch or an inch and a quarter of tube for the 4x4 pan, and just barely a quarter inch of it for the two-wheel drive pan. But anyway, we have the right filter for the pan we're using. That's the main thing. And to correct more mistake, I keep getting the stupid years wrong. I need to start looking stuff up and not going by memory, because the old supercomputer between my ears is pretty much full, and my some of the files are a little corrupted. But anyway, so this transmission, first I told you it came out in 1995. That was wrong. Then I told you it came out in 1991. That was wrong too. It came out in 1989, the E4OD. And it had update, and then somewhere along the line, it morphed into the 4R100. I'm not even going to guess what year that happened, because if I tell you, I'd be wrong again. Anyway, it doesn't really matter, but you just have to watch when you're ordering parts and stuff, because there were so many updates. It's handy to have this chart that I found on the Google that sort of glosses over the updates over the years to these transmissions. But that chart is very vague. These people, ATSG, who made the overhaul manual we're using, they also have an update manual. That's how many updates there were. Like, it's almost as thick as this, and it goes into great detail of, this part number transmission had this many check balls, that one had that many, and it's in great detail. I don't need to worry about that, because we're basically putting our 1995 transmission back together as a just kind of an upgraded 1995 transmission. Now, as far as this thing goes, I could tell by this primer finish on it that this thing has been to a converter shop. Well, I guess it's just probably an exchange torque converter from when the transmission was overhauled by whatever rebuilder overhauled it. So, based on what I saw inside the rest of the transmission, it was so clean and so nice. I'm going to take a chance with this and say, from what I could see, I can deduce that this converter is good. So we're just going to put it back in and hope for the best. Worst case scenario, we have to pull the transmission back out. It's not a really big deal on a van. I tell you, with that you take the doghouse off, all the bell housing bolts are there. It's actually easier working on a van than a pickup truck a lot of times. Well, that'll do it for this one, I guess. We've got all our parts that we need. I went through everything. I couldn't find anything else that I could need. There was one other Transco update kit for the main valve body for the shift valves, but it turns out that affected or was for a newer valve body than the one we have. There's no problem with the one we have. No update required. We like that. The kit was about $60. So anyway, we're going to go ahead now in the next video and start getting stuff ready and put back together. I will decide, I'm going to think about it tonight. I'm going to decide whether or not I want to do all my sub-assemblies and then just kind of assemble the thing, or if I'm going to just do the sub-assembly and put it in, do the sub-assembly and put it in. Either way is okay. It just kind of boils down to logistically how you got to do it or how you prefer doing it. It doesn't really matter. Anyway, I'm going to take off now. Deb has been in there cooking, and unfortunately the vent hood from her stove blows right out at my garage, and I've been going stir crazy all afternoon smelling whatever it is that she's cooking. I don't know what it is, but I can tell you it's going to be good, and I feel sorry for you because you can't come here and eat some of it. Ha ha! Ha ha! Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Hope you'll come and see us again. And until then, this is Kevin saying so long from the Claremont Classic Garage.